Welcome to Ignite Your Team's Motivation. You are here because you are a leader of a team who wants to help your team to elevate to the next level of their performance. You want to help the people on your team be more engaged. You want to help the people on your team find purpose, create a clear, compelling future for themselves, because you know that we are in a very different world now. We are in a world of very high turnover. We are in a world where people are leaving one job, going to the other because of more pay or because they'll feel more appreciated or whatever it may be. Or you are simply a leader who wants that next strategy, that next skill development that will help to take you to your next level of personal and professional development. We've got a lot for you today for Ignite, so let's just jump right to it. I have one outcome for you throughout our time together, and our outcome is for you to adopt several new strategies and tools to ignite motivation for your entire team. And the question I have for you to kick this off right now is, what is the one thing that you would say is holding you back from operating at your peak performance? And I'll ask it as, what do you believe the one thing is that's holding your team back from operating at peak performance? Maybe it's a lot of new people coming in, a lot of new hires who don't understand the processes. Maybe it's other trainers or leaders inside your organization who teach things a different way than you pass down to them. You've got a lot of different rogue operations going on. Maybe it's just a lack of motivation in general amongst your team. Maybe you've done a survey recently and a lot of people have told you they weren't too happy to come to work. Regardless, what is the top thing stopping you or your team from operating at levels of peak performance? And I would like you to put it in the chat wherever you're watching or listening to this. Put it in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from, as well as what is the one thing stopping you and your team from that level of peak performance. Because I think it's really important that we look at the facts. And they're not easy to look at, but they're important to look at. And these are stats from Gallup, which is an organization that monitors and reports on team engagement, organizational health, corporate health, both for themselves as a business and for stockholders in certain companies. And what they found is turnover compared to 2013. So we're looking at a 10-year time frame here. Turnover since 2013 is up by 40%. That could be due to a lot of different things. It could be engagement. It could be the lack of you bringing in outside resources for your people. It could be people just not excited to come to work. It could be the introduction of websites like Indeed and, the evolution of what used to be Craigslist now becoming all these different websites where people can easily go look for a different job, start conversations on LinkedIn, connect with other people to find different opportunities. So the opportunities that are out there for your top talent are more than ever. So the big question is, what are you doing specifically to keep the top people on your team working for you, and not just working for you, but happy to work for you? Absences have increased by 50% since 2013. This is people waking up, calling in. This is people calling in sick. This is people using more of their personal time, more of their vacation time. I'm sure some of these absences could be the introduction of new employee programs that allow them to take more time off, which is great. Although a lot of these are sick time and people using personal time and time off in general. And since 2013, there has been a drop of 18% in productivity. 18%. Think of that in terms of profit. Think of that in terms of getting things done. Think of that in terms of moving the needle forward for you, your team, and your organization. So obviously, something must change. And you're here today because you're aware of these stats. Maybe you weren't, maybe you are now, and you're asking, what is the process we can use to move forward? But you might also be asking, Brandon, who are you to deliver this process to me right now, to share it with you? And what I have to say is, I want you to think of me as someone who has been there and done that. I've been the not engaged team member. I've been the leader who had to help a team become engaged. And now with my business, Be Better Industries, all I do is work with teams and leaders to help them become more engaged, more motivated, to increase profit, to lower turnover, and to make your culture and your workplace a happier and a better place for you to work. And I do that as an outside consultant now with Be Better Industries, which we'll be talking about in this presentation. But this isn't going to be me just saying, hey, bring me in to chat with your team. I would love to do so, But even if you don't bring me in to talk with your team, at least right now, then you're going to leave with several different things in the 5-step formula that I call the self-mastery sequence that you'll be able to deliver to your team on your own, should you choose to do so. Now, like I mentioned, I was that non-engaged employee. I started my working career technically with my first full-time job in 2012, which was right around that 10-year time frame that these stats really started to change that I just showed you. And I started in sales. So this is me. This is when I was 18 years old. I'm 29 now, to give you some reference. And at the time, I was going to school to become a lawyer. I used to see lawyers on television. I saw that they wore suits. They looked good. They made a lot of money. And I said, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be that guy. So I started going to school while I was working for Walmart in the technology department, where I sold cell phones and prepaid plans and all those things. And I then had an opportunity to start working for a sales career. And I remember Walmart told me, Brandon, you're doing a great job here, but you're only seasonal. So you have the opportunity to either go somewhere else or work in a different department. And I said, what department would those be? And they said, you can either push carts or go work in the grocery department. And I said, while those things sound glorious and they're very respectable, I think that I'll go look for a different opportunity. So that's what I did. I went on Craigslist, which I just mentioned, and I found a job that was still a job where I would sell cell phones, but it was for a company named Cellular Sales. And this is me starting with them in 2012. And I quickly realized how much money you can make in sales. I was going to school to become a lawyer to make 60 grand a year. And my first year with this company, I made $58,000. And I was like, why am I going to school if I'm already reaching my income goal? Imagine what I could make here in sales if I just went all in and focused on only this opportunity. So I went to my leader at the time and he said, dude, just drop out of school. And I said, that's just crazy. What are my parents going to think? What are my teachers going to think? What are my friends going to think? Society in general wants me to go to college. They say it's the only path for a young man and young woman out of school. And he said, you've already reached your income goal. Drop out of school. So I did that. And I started making some purchases. This is me a couple years later. And this is me with my first brand new car. It was a 2014 Kia Optima. And then I started to make more money. My second year with the company, I was only focused on improving my performance, making more money, more money, more money. Money was on the mind. Money was the name of the game. And a couple years later, I bought myself another new car and traded in the perfectly nice Kia Optima, which had cooled seats and all the amenities, for a brand new BMW, which, believe it or not, didn't even have cooled seats. But it had that really nice BMW logo on the front of the car. And as you can see from these photos, if we go back, I was healthy looking, right? I'm wearing a nice suit. It's very tapered to my body. And then in this picture, I started gaining a bit of weight. In the next picture, I started to gain even more weight, right? So you're seeing me progress in terms of my financial health. However, I was declining in the other areas of my life. My health was faltering. My happiness was faltering. At this point, I was 60 pounds heavier than I am now. I was overweight. I was unhappy. I was making a lot of money, but believe it or not, it's not about how much you make. It's about what you do with the money that you make. And I was deep in debt. I was over $20,000 in debt, buying these things that I couldn't afford. I wasn't engaged at work. I was actually that person that the other colleagues of mine didn't want to spend time around because I was only focused on money. There was nothing in place to help engage me at my place of work. And I started to actually look for different opportunities. And I was making almost 100 grand a year. And I had been in leadership and out of leadership at this point. I blamed everyone else except for myself. I lacked ownership. I had no idea of the concept that you could improve yourself or even buy a book to improve yourself. I know that sounds crazy, but just think about how many people are in your organization right now who aren't working on improving themselves, who aren't going to the gym, who aren't reading books, who aren't meditating or giving themselves a self-care ritual of any kind. Think about how many people that is. And from my experience, it's a lot of people. It's more than 60 to 70% of your people. So I started looking for different jobs. This is 3 years into me working here. I'm 21 years old at this point. And my manager said, Brandon, you're making a big mistake here. He's like, you don't need to look for a different job. He said, Brandon, the grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. And you will have more opportunities here with this company should you choose to stay. So I said, what do I need to do then? And he said, Brandon, you need to read this book. And you might have heard of this book, This is The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. And this book changed my life. This was the first introduction I had to the world of personal and professional development. And for those who haven't read The Secret, I recommend you go pick up your copy of the book. But what The Secret says is your thoughts become things. What you think about, you will bring into your life. And at this point in my life, all I was thinking about was where I wasn't in life. I was thinking about how bad I felt. I was thinking about how bad I looked. When I looked in the mirror, I thought, wow, you're fat, you're unhealthy, you don't take care of yourself. And the more I thought those things, the more I manifested even more of those things into my life. So I read this book, and it was really cheesy. I'll just give you a forewarning. It's a cheesy book, and you can go watch the documentary too. I believe it's on Netflix or wherever you can watch stuff like that. And I said to myself, I got no other choice. I've got to do something in order to bring my life to a place where it's not right now, which is healthy, happy, feeling good to come to work each day. And I want to be a better resource for the people around me. And within 6 months, my life completely changed. If you look on the left here, the left and the bottom middle, this is me when I was 21 in 2016. The next year, within 6 months, actually, is how the time frame worked out. You'll see the picture of my wife and I at the top middle and the right side there. I lost over 60 pounds. I was able to eliminate over $20,000 of credit card debt. I was in a completely different place emotionally. And as I'm sure you can imagine, that completely helped to positively transform the relationships in my life as well. A lot changed for me in 6 months because I was introduced to the world of personal and professional development, and because I followed a very specific process that I'm going to introduce to you here in a few minutes. Now, this is another example of me back in 2016, and then me just a few years ago at one of our company's kickoff parties for a client that I work with. And the results have continued. The reason I include this is to show it wasn't just a temporary thing. It continued to travel along that trajectory. And there's a simple process that I followed myself in order to change my life. And it's the same process that I use when I go into organizations and corporations and work with teams, just like I may work with yours. I always introduce the same process that I use to transform my life personally and professionally in those 6 months, which is called the self-mastery sequence. Now, I'm going to show you this sequence, but I want to bring your attention first to this question. When I read The Secret, I was introduced to the 5 key areas of life. And I want to ask you, when you look at the 5 key areas of life, we've got your financial health, we've got your relationships, we have your spiritual health, your emotional health, and your physical health, also known as what I wrote, your physical body. This is how you look. This is how you feel physically, okay? When you look at this pie chart, I want you, and I challenge you to do this, to write down each of the 5 key areas of your life. And I would like you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 in each of those 5 key areas. And for me, my physical health was a 1 out of 5. My emotional health as a result of my physical health was a 1 out of 5. And my spiritual health looks like a bigger chunk of the pie, but really that should be even smaller because my spiritual health really didn't even exist. My spiritual health entered the frame once I read The Secret. And spirituality can take many different fronts. Spirituality can be your relationship with God, your relationship with religion, your relationship with infinite intelligence or source, or your belief systems, right? Spirituality doesn't have to just be religion. It could also be a lot of different things, and it will mean something unique to you. So I'd like you to write down each of these 5 key areas. If you really want to get the most out of this presentation and training, then pause this, come back to it, write down the 5 key areas, and rate yourself on the scale of 1 to 5 in each of those key areas. And as you do that, I'll tell you a story of a company I worked with. You might have heard of them. Their name is Aflac, and they are a Fortune 100 company. And I had the opportunity to work with their sales team over here in Saratoga Springs, New York, last year in the first and second quarter. And wow, what an incredible group of people. And they brought me in for the same issues that you may be having in your organization. Lower engagement, people were overworked, people were overstressed, people were lacking in the activity department. This was a sales team. So the activity is the bread and butter. The more activity you have, the more results that you get. And I began working with this incredible team with Aflac for an entire quarter. We worked together. And I introduced to this team the 5 P's of self-mastery, which is also known as what I showed you, the self-mastery sequence. And I'd like to actually show you the results that this team had once they were introduced to this idea of personal and professional development. So if you take a look here at this case study, 70% of the participants of the program made more money. They wrote more business for Aflac. There was a 28% quarterly increase in total written business. That's almost 30% improved sales in just one quarter. And there was a 51% increase in total business written for the year for 2023 versus 2022, which is mind-blowing, okay? And the regional manager, Melissa, also remarked on the notable increase in team inspiration and motivation. Participants created a plan and followed through on that plan, improving their leadership skills, their sales skills, and their digital and in-person networking skills. Now, those are huge, giant improvements for only one quarter, but it just goes to show that once you implement these strategies, the opportunities are limitless for you and your team. Now you're probably wondering, what did that quarter look like? Is that working every day? Is that a training every week? Not quite, right? The way that the program worked, to give you just a snapshot view, is we started with a kickoff session. And then we had several action sessions on top of that every other week until we celebrated everyone for going through the program. And then we had a final check-in session with each participant. So this was only a total of 4 sessions, as well as the celebration session. So not a lot went into this, but the work that did go into it was impactful and effective work that made everybody more money and also increased the motivation, inspiration, and morale on this team. So this is what it looks like, to give you an example of what it can look like when you bring me into your organization to work with your team to deliver these concepts to them personally myself. Now, again, I'm going to give you this sequence so that you can deliver it to your team as well. But this is what it looks like when you bring someone else in to your team. Now, this was the whole team at the beginning, and these are just some snapshots of that same Aflac team afterwards, accepting their certificates for going through the program. And what feels better than to be recognized in front of your entire team for completing a program that has made you a better human being? Not much feels better than that. So I'd like to give you the sequence that you can give to your team and also to apply in your own life that will make all the difference for you. It is called the self-mastery sequence, and it's very important. If you think of what leadership is, your only role, leadership is influence. And in order to influence somebody else, you can tell them to do something. You could explain the importance of something. But the number one way to get somebody to do something that is the best thing for them is to implement it in your life yourself. So yes, these principles are for your team. But as we quickly go through these 5 P's of self-mastery, this sequence here, which should be followed in order, ask yourself, where am I when it comes to this principle of life? As an example, the first P of self-mastery is creating a plan for your life. And this is the very first step. Because when I was that 21-year-old kid who didn't know what I wanted, who was overweight, who was unhappy, who was unmotivated, who was essentially depressed at that time in my life, I had no way forward. I didn't know what I wanted for my life. The first thing I had to do was, what is it that I want? Now, I want you to take a look at this. And we're quickly going to draw the world's most beautiful brain here on this flip chart. I want you to imagine that this is a brain. It's the worst brain you've ever seen, I know. And there's a part of the brain that when we create a plan for our life, this part of our brain wakes up. And it's called the reticular activating system, the RAS. And it's a very, very small node at the tip of your brain stem. And the RAS only has one purpose. It's to help you focus on what is important to you. Our brain is the world's greatest deleter of information. So 99% of everything happening around you, you are actually tuning out from your consciousness and your awareness. Imagine if you weren't. As an example, right now you're hearing me speak, you're watching the screen, you're engaged in this training. However, if you silence everything and you just focus on what's happening around you, maybe you hear the AC whirring in the background. Maybe if you really listen, you can hear traffic on the street outside. Or if you're in an office space with other people, you can hear other people clicking their pen at the desks next to you. And if you really want to get tuned in, tune into the feeling of the rush of blood behind your left ear. You can feel it. Tune into your heartbeat. It's there. Now imagine that you were experiencing all of these things at once. You would literally go nuts, right? So this is why your brain deletes out 99% of what is not important. So how do you deem what's important to you? You write it down. Once you tell your brain, your reticular activating system, what's important to you, you'll begin to notice even more of that in the environment that surrounds you. You'll begin to notice people and places and things that will help you to achieve your goals and get to where you want to get to. So one of my goals was to look better and to feel better. I started to notice the gyms on the corners. I started to see posts on Facebook of people getting fit, of people posting their before pictures and their after pictures. I began having conversations with people that were centered around health, that were centered around fitness, right? Once I had a goal to eliminate my debt and become debt-free, I started to read books like The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey that helped me to become debt-free. And I'd recommend that book to anybody if you want to get yourself out of debt or to build wealth. It's an amazing book for that. So I started to notice all these things around me that I wasn't noticing or doing before, and that's because I determined what was important to me. Creating a plan is so important. And when it comes to you helping your team to do this, number one, you must do it yourself, like I mentioned. Number two, sit each person on your direct team down for a one-on-one conversation, a lunch meeting, and ask them, what are you most focused on right now in your life? What is most important to you right now in your life? Where do you want your life to be in the next 6 months? I always like to ask the question, wave a magic wand and ask yourself, if everything went perfectly for you, achievement-wise, accomplishment-wise, goal-wise, in the next 6 months, where would you be in the next 6 months? And ask them to paint that picture for you, and as their leader, write it down and ask them, what would it feel like if you didn't accomplish those things? Introduce that element of pain, like we do in the workshops that we host, like I just showed you that we did with Affleck. Introduce that pain, because we are more apt to take action from pain than pleasure. It's human psychology. So the first step is to create that plan. The next step is you have to power the plan. You've got to give the plan fuel. And this is very, very, very important. And there's several different aspects to this. And in order to really paint this picture for you, I want you to think about where all action stems from. All action, we'll put action right here. All action comes from what? It comes from how you feel. It comes from your emotions. This is where your emotional health and that question I asked you earlier comes into play. But what determines how we feel? Have you ever thought about that? When you're feeling amazing, why do you feel amazing? Is it because someone else did something to you to get you to feel amazing? Not so much, right? Why did you actually feel amazing? Well, it's your thoughts and your body that determines how you feel at any given moment. And how you feel determines what actions you take, and your actions are what determine the results that you get. Imagine what those productivity numbers would look like if everyone on your team felt great and took actions that correlated with those great emotions. Just imagine, it's not Pollyanna, it's not a fantasy land. This is a reality that can be yours for you and your team. I've seen it happen countless times with the many, many clients that I've worked with and teams that I've had the opportunity to train and workshops to facilitate. Now, if there's two things that determine how you feel, your thoughts and your body, what can you do about that? Well, right now, if you weren't feeling so great, what's the first thing you can do in order to change the way that you feel in this exact moment? Is it to eat a meal? Is it to sit down and meditate? Maybe those things can help. The most rapid shift you can take in any given moment is to change what you're doing with your body in that moment. Change your physiology. If you're on the couch, that's probably why you're not feeling too great. Stand up, move your body rapidly. If you really want to get crazy, go outside, go for a run around your development, go for a run on the bike trail next to your house, go for a run on the streets, go play golf, go do something that moves your body. Why do people like playing golf so much? Is it because they like to have the club and hit the ball and watch where it goes and get pissed off when it doesn't go in the hole? Not so much. People like golf because of that, I'm sure, a little bit. However, they truly like it because they're getting outside. They're around nature. They're breathing in the fresh air. They're looking into the distance and seeing the beautiful trees and shrubberies and other people, the community that it involves. They're moving their body. They're walking from hole to hole. Even if they're on the golf cart, they're still walking between where the ball is and where the ball went and putting it on the green. People like golfing not because of the game itself, but because of how it makes them feel, because they're adjusting these two things. And when you move your body, when you go for that run, when you get down and you do 20 push-ups, when you do some sit-ups, when you do some pull-ups, when you move your body and change your physiology, it's the quickest way to change how you feel. Changing your thoughts will work too. However, changing your body is what comes first. Now, in my book called Be Extraordinary, Your Guide to Self-Mastery, this book I wrote in 2019, and it goes over each of those 5 key areas of your life that we just mentioned: your physical body, your emotions, your relationships, your finances, and your spirituality. And I give you actual strategies that you can use, even more than what we're talking about today, that you can use in order to shift your thoughts to more positive, as well as to move your body in a great way, including how to eat, when to eat, all these different things, the different types of thoughts that we have, so on and so forth. But the second part of this formula is to fuel the plan that you just created by moving your body and fostering thoughts that serve you. The third part of the self-mastery sequence is purpose. My entire life changed when my role that I was in inside of the company fit my strengths and my desires. And as a leader of your team, I'd like to ask you, how conscious are you of the roles that you're placing specific people in on your team? How conscious are you in developing the strengths of the people on your team? If I asked you, what is Susie's strength? What is Bill's strength? Would you be able to tell me what their strength is, as well as what they're passionate about? Because when you can marry somebody's unique skills and abilities and talents to their purpose, their performance will change drastically. Once I learned that I loved teaching people and I loved training people, and I started to deliver team presentations, I learned that that was my strong point. That was where I wanted to be. That is what I wanted to do. And my leader at the time said, Brandon, if you love to train teams, if you love to be up there at the front of the room sharing your knowledge based on your experience, then we're going to have you do every single team training. And that led me to the next step in my career, where I became the new hire trainer for all the new salespeople that came into the company for upstate New York. And that led me to my next step in my career, which was the market director, the training director. So once I determined my purpose and really stepped into what I enjoyed, what am I good at, what makes the most positive difference for other people, that is when my personal life and my professional life truly excelled. So when it comes to purpose, ask yourself again, how in tune am I with the strengths, passions, and abilities of my team? And how am I putting them into positions of power where they can truly say that they have purposeful work inside of this organization? That is the third P. The fourth P is people. And this can go several different ways. Now, when I was 21 years old, when I looked around at the people that I was spending my time with, I was spending time around people who were also overweight. I was spending time with people who were also unhappy. I was spending time with other people who didn't have a plan. I was spending time with other gossipers like I was at the time. And I asked myself, how is my life going to change if I'm spending my time and my life around all these people who are essentially living the same life as me right now? And one of the first speakers and people that I started to listen to back then, his name was Jim Rohn. And you've probably heard of Jim Rohn. He was Tony Robbins' mentor. And he had a quote that said, "You are the average of the 3 to 5 people that you spend the most time around." So I had to really assess my life and look around me and ask, are these individuals serving me where I want to go? And am I truly serving them by staying where I am right now, not moving forward? And the answer was no. So I started to change my environment. That is the first part of the fourth P, which is people. Change your environment. Move yourself around people who are where you want to be or who are on the same path and journey as you are right now of self-improvement and professional development. Get yourself around the right people. And the second part of people is how to effectively network, how to meet other people inside your organization, how to meet people outside your organization, how to make a difference for your community, how to make a difference for your family. The networking aspect of people is everything. And I was introduced to the world of effective networking in 2021 when I met my friend and business partner, Christine Smith, who calls herself the Obi-Wan Kenobi of networking. And people is so important because the bigger the network you build around yourself, the more people you can send others to and refer people to and go to for help and assistance, and the more you can collaborate and connect and once again curate the environment of people that are around you at any given time. That's the fourth P. And the final P, and one of the most important ones, is progress. Now, if I said raise your hand if you are an overachiever, I'd bet that over 90% of you raise your hand, probably even more, maybe 95, 100%. And that's the only reason you're listening to this right now, because you are a leader who realizes there's always room to grow, and you always want to give that next strategy and technique to your team to help them to grow as well. And when it comes to us as overachievers, we tend to want to do many, many, many different things at once, which I get. I'm that same type of person. However, when you look at the greatest achievements in life, when you look at Elon Musk building PayPal and SpaceX and then Tesla, and when you look at Bill Gates, who built Microsoft, and then Steve Jobs, who built Apple, when you look at these different individuals, their careers spanned over the course of decades. Everything didn't happen in 1 year. Everything didn't happen in 2 years. Everything certainly didn't happen in 3 years. Things took time. And when you apply this self-mastery sequence to your life, when you apply it to that one area out of those 5 key areas of life that we talked about earlier that is below the others, for me, it was my physical body. For you, maybe it's your relationships, maybe it's your spirituality, maybe it's your finances. But when you focus on that one area of life that is holding the others back and you apply this self-mastery sequence to it, the name of the game is 1% progress each day. 1% progress. It's the small wins each day consistently that equate to the strongest and greatest achievements. And if you do one thing each day, starting now to the end of the year, mathematically, I used to believe that you'd be 365% better, but that's not how quotients and mathematics works. It's 37% better. So if you start today on becoming 1% better every single day in making progress towards your plan and making progress towards making your team a better place to work and come to work for, if you focus on helping the people around you 1% each day, by the end of 1 year, you'll be 37% better. So I'm not the best at math, so I'm going to pull my calculator out right now. Let's say you continue your efforts for 5 years, because 5 years is going to pass. No matter what you do, 5 years is going to happen. So you can either let it happen intentionally, or just let it float by the way that you might have been doing already, then after 5 years, if you improve by 1% each day, that's 185% improvement compared to where you are now. 185% improvement. I'm a living testament of this. After I made those big changes in my life when I was 21, by the time I was 24, I was in a top level position of leadership inside of a company that earns over $1 billion a year in sales. From there, when I was 26, I started Be Better Industries, my business now, where I work with teams like yours to introduce the self-mastery sequence. And now I'm traveling the country. I'm spending time with my son, spending time with my wife, doing the things that I love to do, traveling, helping people, strengthening teams, because like we talked about with the third P of self-mastery, I'm living my purpose. And that wouldn't have happened if at 21 I didn't make those changes. If at 26 I didn't decide to continue making progress forward. But it didn't happen overnight. And my question for you is now, with all this information, with you knowing and understanding where you are in each of the 5 key areas of life on that scale of 1 to 5, with you understanding the 5 P's of self-mastery and what you must do each day in order to make that 1% progress forward, what will you do with this information to help you and your team elevate to your next level? What is the one thing that you'll do leaving this conversation together that will improve your life personally and professionally? Now, as I mentioned before, I work with teams to apply each of these 5 P's of self-mastery. Generally, I work with teams as a one-time full-day workshop where we get together and we share an experience together. We meet in the morning, we have lunch, we go into the afternoon and the mid-evening to employ these principles and leave your team with actions that they can take in order to stay with your team longer, be more productive, and to perform at a higher level. To get in touch with me, again, my name is Brandon Eastman. You know that if you've been watching up until this point. This is my email on the screen, brandon@bebetterindustriescom. Please send me an email, reach out to me on LinkedIn. My phone number is here as well. Should you be someone who still loves to call, I love to call too. Give me a call, leave me a voicemail if I don't pick up. This is a picture of my wife and I at my first Be Better Bootcamp in 2019 that we hosted over here in Albany, New York. We had a great group of people show up, and she is the best part of my team and the best part of my life, and that's the two of us there together, should you care to even look. But if you want to bring someone in to help your team take it to their next level of personal and professional development, shoot me a message and we can talk about how I can help you and your team do that. Thank you so much for joining us today for Ignite Your Team's Motivation. I hope you took a ton out of this time together. And as always, until we speak again next time, continue to be better.